don't pretend these assholes give a shit about you. If they gave a shit about genocide, they'd stop that shit in Yemen. If they gave a shit about genocide, they'd stop the shit in Myanmar.
3 million people, refugees in neighboring countries. It's clear it's not just an internal question. The neighboring countries are affected. So for us, this is clearly an international question.
I'm the exact opposite. If I'm the Secretary of State, if you can't change elections, and you're the Secretary of State, then who the hell could change the elections?
Aquí estoy, pues, he cumplido con la Constitución. Está certificado mi juramento.
So the U.S. government is being so brazen, so absolutely cavalier. They are sitting there straight up saying they're going to steal the oil. They've already got the oil companies lined up. They've already blocked the oil, so they're getting ready to go in. This is exactly what Trump had said. Donald said that the problems with Libya is that we didn't go in and take their oil. We get something signed, and then not only do we offer 50%, but they'd probably give us 75% of their oil just to help them out. So he's sitting there saying that you got to go into the country and just take their oil. And then he also laughed about sovereignty. Oh, sovereignty. You hear what people say about sovereignty? Oh, yeah, because other countries aren't their own. Hitler's crime was he invaded Czechoslovakia, then he invaded Poland. When he invaded Poland, the entire world said, this motherfucker's out of control. He's going to be an imperialist. He's going to take over the entire world. When he invaded Poland, when he invaded the second country, a sovereign nation.
The floor to members of the council who wish to make statements.
Doy la palabra al
Give the
excelentísimo
floor
señor
to His
Michael
Excellency
Pompeo,
Mr.
secretario de
Michael
Estado de los
Pompeo,
Estados Unidos de
Secretary
América.
of State of the United States of America.
Good morning. On behalf of President Trump and the American people, I first want to thank Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas.
So, I'm just going to go ahead and order the government to steal Canada's oil refineries. Just take Canada's oil refineries. Just go ahead and steal $7 billion worth of Canada's oil refineries. We're not going to have a referendum. We're not going to ask the American people. We go into Libya. We go into Syria. We don't ask the American people. They ain't going to say shit. We don't even ask Congress. Congress already ceded their war authority a long time ago. We got a dictator who's got unlimited war powers who issues off executive orders by the dozen, like he's popping Tic Tacs, like he's grabbing crotches. Just executive order here, executive order there. That is a dictator. That is a dictator. He ran against executive orders. Now he's Mr. Executive Order.
Of the Dominican Republic, the current president of the Security Council, for scheduling this meeting. My former colleague, Ambassador Haley, lobbied for a year to get the council to address Venezuela, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. This meeting is long overdue. And you all know why it's overdue.
Talk about a national emergency being declared for the border. There is some issues with the border. We got 11 million illegal folks here, and there's 25,000 people coming up onto the borders. But the reason why is because of these regime war wars of regime change. So Venezuela, people are sitting there saying there's migration now. Imagine how much migration there's going to be once we invade. This is Hillary Clinton's policy. She listens to Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger's worldview was a coup d'etat in Chile. You think Hillary would have done something different? Pelosi is on board with invading Venezuela. Kamala Harris hasn't said shit because she don't have any moral sense whatsoever. War and peace. These motherfuckers don't give a shit. If these warmongers spoke about the wars that they disagreed with, then I would be more out to listen to them. But they love every single war that comes at them. Anytime they have a chance for war, they just more and more war. That's Republicans and Democrats. It's a bipartisan consensus. Only Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, and one other lady whose name I haven't memorized yet. But only 4 people in the United States Congress has spoken out against this. Only 4 people.
Take Carlos Aquino, a 37-year-old construction worker, weeping over the tiny coffin of his deceased infant son who had died of starvation. Such scenes of misery are now the norm in Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela, where millions of children are suffering from malnutrition and starvation.
So they're sitting there saying that the 2018 presidential election was not acceptable because the opposition boycotted it. Well, let's just take a look at elections in America. Let's take a look at my beloved homeland, Kentucky. So in 2015, the primaries had a turnout rate of 13%. The general election saw, almost twice, or actually a little bit more than twice, 28%. So 3 million Kentuckians are registered to vote, but 800,000 of them voted. That's 28% in the general election. And that number is actually less than in 2007, the heyday of democracy in Kentucky, when 38% turned out to vote. These motherfuckers don't give a shit if you come out to vote. They don't want to listen to your damn opinion. They're not going out and talking to you. They don't give a goddamn. You got Mitch McConnell saying that elections shouldn't be a holiday. What a piece of shit.
Thanks to a socialist experiment that caused the economy to collapse. This human misery isn't a secret. Stories like this one are well documented by our press corps. You can read about men like Carlos every day. People like him are why the United States has called this meeting.
So in Kentucky, for the governor's race, right, their president, in 2007, 38% turned out. Well, that's less than the 49% that turned out from Maduro. That's less. Maduro, they're saying it's illegitimate because the opposition boycotted and because the turnout rate was only 49%. That's not a majority. You can't have an election if you don't have a majority. How come nobody says shit about this? In Kentucky, 38% turnout rate. What a shitty democracy in Kentucky. They don't have initiatives. They don't have referendums. There's no democracy in Kentucky. 3 million Kentuckians are registered to vote. 800,000 voted in the 2015 general election, 28%. Let's just focus on that. That was the last governor's race. They got a governor's race this year. How many people are going to vote in Kentucky? If they don't break the 50% threshold, well, we need to go into Kentucky. We need to take their coal. We need to take their resources because their democracy sucks. So upon my orders, I'm going to write an executive order, give it to the Treasury, and then they're going to go ahead and just start stealing your coal. Just start stealing your natural resources. Y'all don't seem to give a shit about your own state. You don't give a shit about democracy. So we need to go into Kentucky. Our military needs to go into Kentucky, impose martial law so they can get their democracy back on track.
Y desde hoy asumo la presidencia de la República para el segundo periodo, electo por el pueblo 2019-2025. Aquí estoy, listo de pie para democráticamente llevar las riendas de nuestra patria hacia un mejor destino, hacia un destino superior.
Coup d'etats are illegitimate. Coup d'etats are illegitimate. If you violently overthrow somebody, then you can, if they get violently overthrown later on, you have no moral superiority to sit there and say that they can't do it. That's how you got power, so that's how they got power. A good example, because the U.S. government doesn't give a shit about Juan Guaido. They've been sitting there calling him Guido. They've been saying every other name but his actual name. They don't even know how to pronounce their puppet's name. So Juan Guaido, he is just like Diem in Vietnam. So he's our puppet, and then because he's, put himself in this position, let's assume he gets the presidency. Well, 3 years later, Diem, we went ahead and assassinated Diem because we didn't like what he was doing. That's JFK. JFK assassinated Diem, the puppet regime in Vietnam that we propped up. So Juan Guaido, yeah, for now he's America's friend, but for how long? 1, 2, 3 years? Yeah, this is all about democracy, isn't it? Yeah, this is all about because democracy is so sacred here. It's not sacred in Kentucky. The majority of Kentuckians boycotted the Kentucky election because they believe it's illegitimate. The majority of Kentuckians boycott Kentucky's election because there is no legitimacy. There's no democratic legitimacy to those elections. There's not going to be more than 50%, so why vote?
We're here because Maduro has reduced ordinary Venezuelans who once lived in prosperity to rooting through dumpsters to find something to eat. We're here because scores of Venezuelan women, some of them teenagers, have fled Maduro's madness to other countries and in desperation turned to prostitution to survive.
I'm the exact opposite. If I'm the Secretary of State, if you can't change elections and you're the Secretary of State, then who the hell could change the election?
We're here because of Maria Vilema, a school psychologist, who said through tears, "We have a government that is dedicated to destroying, not to constructing. Another man, a farmer, named Vladimir Sekera, who never got more than a 6th grade education, but he hoped that his stepdaughter Gabriela could fulfill her dreams of being a lawyer. She now says, "Our whole future has been taken away." That future, for her and all Venezuelans, didn't magically disappear on its own. The Maduro regime's failed policies, oppression, and corruption stole that future.
There's a shit ton of poverty in Kentucky. This is a failed state. You have a bunch of children in Kentucky who have been given the death sentence of poverty. There's homelessness everywhere. They don't give a shit. They don't care.
Venezuela's security services show restraint. And I want to be 100% clear. President Trump and I fully expect that our diplomats will continue to receive protections provided under the Vienna Convention. Do not test the United States on our resolve to protect our own people. We hope that the international community will support the people of Venezuela and the transitional government led by Juan Guaido.
So there's been some headlines about how journalists are going into Venezuela and then they're getting locked up because they don't have visas. All this with the immigration problems that we have, if we have people coming in our country and they don't have a visa, we would lock them up too. So people are sitting there saying, oh, it's a war on journalists. Journalists are sneaking into the country without visas. So Maduro is doing the exact same thing that Donald would be doing if it was, the roles were switched. So right now, Venezuela poses no threat to us. Right now, Venezuela has no weapons of mass destruction. They got no nuclear weapons. They haven't threatened us. There's no genocide that's happening inside. They're not gassing the Kurds. So their economic system is in, tatters. But the way that we put ourselves in danger, because my perspective is what's best for the American people and what's best for the Venezuelan people. What's best for the American people is not to create terrorists in Venezuela. What's best for the American people is not to provoke a war just south of the border. Just south of the border on our hemisphere, you got China, you got India, you got Russia. That's a big-ass country sitting there telling us not to do it. This gives them a pretense to invade this continent. You want us to be less safe? Then invade Venezuela. Once we invade Venezuela, they got a right to defend themselves. That creates terrorism. That creates massive migration. And don't give me that bullshit that the American government is protecting the Venezuelan people. Venezuelan people won't be protected. Just the multinational corporations. Just the oil companies. They are being so brazen. They are sitting there stealing the oil, taking Citgo refineries, stole $7 billion away from the Maduro government. That's an act of war. You steal $7 billion away from somebody else, I get mad if somebody takes, $5 away from me. But if someone steals $7 billion, yeah, so Kentucky, if we go into your state and we steal $7 billion worth of your stuff, you're in America, right? So we're going to freeze your accounts and we're going to take your stuff because your democracy sucks. Since the majority of Kentuckians are boycotting their elections are illegitimate. Every single leadership that has been leader of Kentucky has been illegitimate. So this would be a long time coming. It's about time the American government stood up against Kentucky's anti-democracy fucking bullshit.
On January 23rd, Guaido declared himself interim president of Venezuela in accordance with Venezuela's own constitution. He made this declaration with the full support of the National Assembly and of the Venezuelan people.
And this is just, business as usual. The Senate recently rebuked Donald Trump. He tweets, in these endless wars. Donald Trump is begging the American people to stand up against these wars, but the deep state and the Senate and the Republicans and Democrats on Afghanistan and Syria, they've rebuked Donald on it. So, in these endless wars, right, but these goddamn neoliberals and neocons, Rachel Maddow and Nancy Pelosi doesn't give a shit. They don't care. So first we're going to have a coup d'etat in Venezuela. Then second we're going to declare a national emergency for the border shit. And then we're going to put the United States under martial law. Don't pretend that the oppression that we put upon other countries isn't going to come right here. These capitalists are such limp dick fucking weak ass little bitch ass pussies. These capitalists know that capitalism can't take root in Venezuela by itself, so they have to invade. for thinking of a different economic system. Yeah, free country, freedom and democracy. Yeah, that's what we're all about. So Afghanistan and Syria, Donald tried to get out of it. The Senate is pushing him in. Mainstream media is pushing him into Syria. Who's speaking out against this shit? Who is speaking out against it? Tulsi Gabbard is the most courageous woman in America because she's taking on the military-industrial complex, and she's doing it by herself. She's doing it by herself.
Our nations must stand up for the rule of law and support the leader who the Venezuelan people have affirmed as their legitimate interim president.
So Guaido is only our current puppet right now because he fits the profile. He's a Chicago boy. He's a right-wing Milton Friedmanist, right? Just go ahead and fuck the government over and fuck the people over, cut all the social programs out, start exporting all their stuff, make fucking bucks, right? Start making, just like the oil companies here, just make record profits and fuck the people. Who gives a shit? Just collect all that money and keep collecting the money and then, you know, go ahead and throw a big balloon of whipped cream or something at the homeless people and say, hey, how do you like the taste of the good life? That's what these rich fucking assholes are like.
It is our hope that free and fair elections happen as soon as possible. Back in 1961, President Kennedy spoke in Caracas. He declared, quote, "We will be..."
So Guaido is expendable. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever if he gets assassinated. So the last comments I'm going to make is about the Constitution of Venezuela. Yeah, they care so much about the democracy of Venezuela. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They have no idea what's going on. If you think that an invasion into Kentucky is acceptable because the majority of the Kentucky people didn't vote in the last election, then I'll back off. Then you are amazingly consistent. Where there is lack of democracy, you say invade and force democracy upon them. Okay, I'll back off. I mean, you are consistent. You love democracy so damn much. Okay, that's consistent.
Partners in building a better life for our people. America's ambition has not changed since that day. We stand with the Venezuelan people as they seek to build a better life for themselves, and we cannot...
One of the biggest differences between the Venezuelan democracy and American democracy is they got 5 branches of government. So they got 5 checks to their government. We only got 3 checks, executive, legislative, and judicial. But there's also the election branch, and then there's the citizens branch in Venezuela. The citizens branch is the moral branch. They're the ombudsman, a.k.a. the defender of the people, the chief public prosecutor, and the comptroller general all control the citizens branch. You also got the election branch, which is controlled by the National Electoral Council. So they got an executive, they got a legislative, but that's only unicameral, not bicameral. Then they got a judicial branch, and their judicial branch is completely different than us. We put our justices, our Supreme Court justices, up on a pedestal. The 9 Supreme Court justices are demigods in America. They have that position until the day that they die. But in the Supreme Court of Venezuela, they're only given 2-year terms, which has generally been elected by National Assembly, but also heard that they must pass an exam now. So they got to pass an exam. We don't make any of our judges pass an exam. Oh, you're a, corrupt political piece of shit. Well, get on in there. You don't even have to pass a test to become a judge. You got to pass 50 billion tests just to pass kindergarten, but you don't have to pass a single test to become a judge. You don't have to pass a test to become a citizen in America. Just be born here. That's all you got to do to be in America. Just born here. In China, they make you pass an exam to become a citizen. Our citizenship isn't earned. We don't earn it, and we're not fighting for it. And if you don't use it, if you don't use your democracy, you're going to lose it.
Not ignore the suffering or tyranny taking place in this proud nation. Neither should other countries who care about freedom and prosperity. Today, we call on all members of the Security Council to support Venezuela's democratic transition and interim President Guaido's role in it. Thank you.
Doy las gracias al excelentísimo señor Pompeo por su declaración.
Thank His Excellency, Mr. Pompeo, for his statement.
Doy la palabra.
So the Venezuelan Constitution, the one that they're operating on right now, is the 1999 Venezuelan Constitution. At least that's the old Constitution. They had elected in 2017 a Constituent Assembly. In August 2017, a Constituent Assembly made up of 350 Venezuelans, and they suspended the 1999 Constitution until a new one was created. And so that's the same thing that Hugo Chavez had done, and it's the same thing that Maduro is doing. So when they sit there and say that the Constitution says that Juan Guaido says he should be the president. That is a lie. That is such fucking bullshit. The 1999 Venezuelan Constitution, which has to be the one that they're talking about because there hasn't been a new one yet, it's the 26th Constitution of Venezuela. America's only had 2 constitutions. So they've had 26 constitutions, just got one in 1999 that replaced the 1961 Constitution. One of the biggest changes, they changed the name of Venezuela from the Republic of Venezuela to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, because Hugo Chavez is all about the Bolivarian Revolution.
Most of the opposition did not participate in the elections or recognize the results. On 10 January, Nicolas Maduro was sworn in as president for a second 6-year term.
So the 1999 Venezuelan Constitution actually helped Hugo Chavez get most of what he wanted. But there was a lot of debates, a lot of arguments. This document ended up being 350 articles. So the Venezuelan Constitution is one of the longest, most complicated constitutions in the entire world. It's even longer than Colorado's Constitution. Colorado's Constitution is the longest constitution in America. So 350 articles in the 1999 Venezuelan Constitution. They protected human rights. They had a right to health care, a right to freedom of expression, right to education up to a tertiary level, right to a clean environment, rights of minorities and the indigenous, right to assemble, right to housing, right to employment and free and quality health care. Women have rights. Motherhood is protected under the 1999 Venezuelan Constitution. So those are more rights than what America's document gives. The right to be a mother, to have motherhood protected. We don't do that. We don't protect motherhood. And then the right to have a clean environment. The right to have a clean environment. The right to housing. We don't have a right to housing here. Right to health care. Right to education. Maybe education. Maybe education. But they're a bunch of right-wing fascists inside the school buildings anyway. So do you want to integrate into a burning building? I don't.
On 23 January, large-scale opposition protests culminated with Juan Guaido, president of the opposition-led National Assembly, announcing that he did not recognize President Maduro or his government.
So, since the creation of the Constituent Assembly in August 2017, the 1999 Constitution is suspended until a new one is created. Now, that is backwards. Hugo Chavez got a pushback from his Supreme Court justice saying that the new Constitution doesn't go in until it's been ratified. So the old Constitution is still in play until the new one has been ratified. And the Constituent Assembly has not written the Constitution, and that Constitution has not been put forth to the people. So it hasn't been ratified. But let's read the 1999 Constitution. Let's see what it actually says. If there's issues with the president, what can the Venezuelan people do per the 1999 Venezuelan Constitution? Well, there's no possibility of impeachment of the president by the National Assembly. So that's how we impeach the president, is by our Congress. Their Congress doesn't have the power to impeach. So their Congress doesn't have the power to kick out a president. But the citizens can remove the president by a recall referendum. They could vote them out, get enough signatures, put it on the ballot. So they had a democratic path, a peaceful democratic path to depose of Maduro themselves. Just get a recall referendum up and going. The 1999 Venezuelan Constitution allowed for frequent referendums. They also spelled out all the social responsibilities of the citizens. They also said that you have a right to rebel against injustice. And then it also says that the independence of the Venezuelan Republic is free from foreign domination. So according to their constitution, you can't have any foreigners invade. You can't have foreign domination in Venezuela. That goes against their constitution. You can't get rid of the president just because you declared it. They said there's some obscure law. Read that law to me. What fucking law are you talking about? Because the general understanding of the Constitution is you can't impeach the president. National Assembly cannot impeach the president. The only people that can impeach the president are the people by the ballot box. That's it. Another thing in the Constitution, the state finance of individual parties are gone. So instead of supporting specific parties, whatever parties they have to earn their own money.
Mr. Guaido proclaimed himself interim president, pledging to form a transitional government and call for elections. While the protests were largely peaceful, there were incidents of violence. The Secretary General has expressed strong concern over reports of casualties among demonstrators and has called for transparent and independent investigation of these incidents.
So there's some notes about the Venezuelan Constitution. They're sitting there saying that Juan Guaido is suspended, or is listening to the Constitution. He's being such a good diehard. Yeah, I'm sure these goddamn neocons read 350 articles. I'm sure they read the longest constitution of a nation. They don't even give a shit. These assholes are telling on themselves. They keep saying that Maduro is a mafia crime family. They are pointing right, you point one finger at someone else, three are pointing right back at you. They're the fucking crime family, mafia crime family. If you don't have a government that's a capitalist government, we get to invade you. If you don't allow our oil companies to rape the shit out of your country, then we're going to invade you and kill anybody that stands in our way. This is bad. This is evil. This is sick. This is disgusting. And only Tulsi Gabbard is the only person that's speaking out against it. All you motherfuckers love war and murder and killing so much. Tell me a war that you don't like. I would love to hear it. You warmongering pieces of shit. Tell me a war you didn't like. Because when it's America, yeah, all the war, yeah, you're on, no matter which side, right or wrong, right or wrong, you're with your, no, that's bullshit. If a person walks into the neighborhood and they thought that somebody was a terrorist or someone was killing people, and they just start lighting up the neighborhood and killing 20, 30, 40, 50 people, and then comes out to find out that you were in the wrong neighborhood the whole time, it was in another neighborhood, and you just killed 50 innocent people, what America does, and the blind American people who just goes along with their neocons and neoliberals, is they let the person go ahead and kill the goddamn neighborhood. Have a My Lai massacre. Never fucking stop. You started a war on bullshit pretenses, and now we're going to fucking go all the way to the end, because who gives a shit? 75,000 Americans died in Vietnam, but 4 million Vietnamese. It took 4 million Vietnamese to die before eventually America's like, all right, that's same thing with Leclerc in Haiti. Leclerc in Haiti said we got to wipe out all the Haitians because they had a revolution, and we got to import more slaves.
According to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, credible local sources have reported that at least 20 people have died in the unrest.
Don't pretend these assholes give a shit about you. If they gave a shit about genocide, they'd stop that shit in Yemen. If they gave a shit about genocide, they'd stop the shit in Myanmar.
Many more have been reportedly injured and detained in violent incidents. The High Commissioner stated yesterday, any violent incident resulting in death or injury should be subject to an independent and impartial investigation to find out whether there was excessive use of force by the authorities or if crimes have been committed by members of armed groups, pro-government or otherwise.
So they're not doing this for the Venezuelan people. This is the Chicago boys. This is right-wing economists. This is going to make their economy scream. This is Kissinger. This is right-wing fucking bullshit. Just capitalist, blood-sucking bullshit. And you think it's for the American people? If I went ahead and took all Kentucky's coal, I take Kentucky's coal. That means all my friends are going to get rich. All of us, people that got behind me, are going to get rich. You're not going to get rich, Kentucky. You think that this is going to somehow make the American people wealthier or better off or more safe and secure? It doesn't increase our freedom. It doesn't increase our safety. It does the opposite. They're going to curb our liberties.
I'm extremely concerned, she said, that the situation in Venezuela may rapidly spiral out of control with catastrophic consequences. The High Commissioner also stressed that it is of utmost importance to uphold the right to peaceful assembly and refrain from excessive, disproportionate, and indiscriminate use of force.
And just to announce, they have a pretty formidable opposition. So you got the biggest countries in Asia, India, right, 1 billion people, China, 1 billion people, Russia, which used to be the other superpower of the world. So you got 3 major countries in Asia who's opposed to this. South Africa is opposed to this. Cuba is opposed to this. Jamaica. Hey, Kamala Harris, why don't you listen to your Jamaican roots? Your Jamaican roots are sitting there telling you that this Venezuelan fucking bullshit. It's murder, and it's murdering to steal oil. They're the biggest, largest oil fields in the world. This is about oil. That's what our government is saying. That's what their government is saying. Anybody else to say that it's anything else, you're a fucking liar. You're a fucking liar. You're not disingenuous. You're a goddamn lying piece of shit.
Mr. President, in a statement on 24 January, the Secretary General emphasized the urgency for all relevant actors to commit to inclusive and credible political dialogue to address the protracted crisis in the country, with full respect for the rule of law and human rights.
In this continent, Jamaica, Mexico, Uruguay, Nicaragua, Bolivia. So there's, lots of nations. Also CARICOM, so St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, right? America, you know about all these islands on this continent. Why would you invade you don't even know this continent and you're going to...
He has offered his good offices to help resolve the crisis. The main concern is the well-being of the Venezuelan people and their ability to enjoy their full rights.
So Bolivia is on the Venezuelan people's side, Nicaragua is on the Venezuelan people's side, Jamaica is in favor of peace, Mexico is for democracy and freedom and prosperity, Uruguay is on the side of the Venezuelan people, China, Cuba, South Africa, India. So whereas you had Syria and Iran, and yeah, you got some of America's, North Korea, the enemies of America being opposed to this, you got a lot of people that aren't enemies of America. They don't just hate America to hate America. Jamaica, Mexico, Uruguay, Nicaragua, Bolivia, South Africa. No, they're standing up for right and just and not murdering people and fuck the invasions of sovereign nations. So, peace.
The UN has been providing assistance, particularly in the areas of health and nutrition, and the Secretary General had asked the International Organization for Migration and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees to establish a mechanism to support Venezuelans leaving the country. IOM and UNHCR appointed Mr. Eduardo Stein, former Vice President of Guatemala, as their joint representative to work with regional governments to ensure that support is in place to these individuals. As the Secretary General has stated, in this crucial moment, it is important that all actors exercise maximum restraint to avoid an escalation of violence and confrontation. There are divergent visions of what the future should hold